23 stab wounds. That's what it took to bring down Julius Caesar. 23 senators, 23 blades. A man stabbed so many times that his own killers accidentally wounded each other in the chaos. And yet, forensic pathology tells us something that 2,000 years of history got completely wrong. 22 of those wounds would not have killed him. Only one did. And the identity of that wound, where it was, how deep it went, and who delivered it, changes everything about what happened in that room on March 15th, 44 BC. Before we go further, 3 things I need you to hold in your head. Question 1. If only one wound was fatal, why did it take 23? Question 2. Caesar had time to speak, to move, to pull his toga over his face before he died. What does that tell forensic science about the sequence of the attack? Question 3. The man who delivered the killing blow, was it Brutus? Stay with me, because the answers are not what the history books gave you. Rome, the Ides of March, 44 BC. Caesar is 55 years old. He has survived the civil wars, survived Pompey, survived the crossing of the Rubicon. He has been declared dictator perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity, the most powerful man the Roman world has ever produced. He enters the Theatre of Pompey for a session of the Senate. What he doesn't know, what none of the senators who greet him warmly that morning know that he knows, is that 23 men in that room have a blade hidden beneath their togas. The attack begins when a senator named Julius Caesar grabs Caesar's toga, pulling it from his shoulder, a signal. In seconds, the room becomes a killing chamber. Caesar is surrounded. The first blade strikes, then another. 23 wounds, in total, delivered in a matter of minutes in the enclosed space of the Senate chamber. Senators pushing past each other, shouting, blades going everywhere. And here is the forensic problem that modern science spent decades trying to solve. With 23 wounds, how do you determine which one actually killed him? Because they didn't all kill him at once. Caesar fought back. He covered his face with his toga. He moved. He tried to survive. Something ended that. And forensic pathology can tell us exactly what. The first forensic examination of Julius Caesar was performed by a physician named Antistius. He examined the body on the day of the assassination. His findings were recorded by Suetonius and preserved in the historical record for 2,000 years. His conclusion: of the 23 wounds, only one was fatal. The second wound to the chest. Antistius described it as penetrating deeply, reaching what he believed to be the heart or the major vessels around it. That was the forensic record for 2,000 years. One wound, chest, fatal. But Antistius had no understanding of internal anatomy, no ability to assess depth, no toxicology, no imaging. He was working with the naked eye and the medical knowledge of 44 BC. So in 2003, a forensic pathologist named Francesco Galassi and a team at the European Journal of Internal Medicine decided to do something no one had done before. They applied modern forensic methodology to Antistius's ancient record. They cross-referenced every ancient account of the assassination. They mapped the wound locations against Roman anatomical knowledge. They analyzed the sequencing of events, Caesar's movements, his words, the position of his body when found, and used that behavioral evidence to reconstruct the forensic timeline. What they found confirmed Antistius on one point and overturned everything else. 23 wounds. The majority, 17 wounds by modern assessment, were superficial. They struck areas of the body where a blade would pass through muscle and fat without reaching a vital organ. Arms, shoulders, the upper back. Wounds that would bleed heavily and cause extreme pain. Wounds that, on their own, would not be fatal. This is consistent with what the ancient sources describe. Senators panicking, striking wildly, some wounds delivered from behind at awkward angles. In the chaos of a group assassination in a confined space, accuracy is almost impossible. 3 wounds penetrated deeper, reaching muscle tissue close to vital structures, but stopping short. These would have caused significant internal bleeding, survivable with modern medicine. In 44 BC, survivable only if the bleeding could be stopped quickly. 2 wounds struck the thoracic cavity. The first chest wound entered at an angle that modern analysis suggests deflected off a rib. It would have been agonizing. It would have made breathing difficult. But the rib deflected the blade away from the heart and the aorta. The second chest wound did not deflect. It entered between the ribs at an angle that modern forensic geometry determines would have reached the aorta, the largest blood vessel in the human body. A penetrating wound to the aorta does not kill instantly, but it kills inevitably, and it kills fast. This is the wound. This is the one that ended Julius Caesar. But there's a detail that the 2003 analysis uncovered, a detail that the history books never mention. And it answers question 2 I asked you at the start. Caesar didn't die immediately. And that behavioral evidence, what he did in the minutes between the first strike and his death, is some of the most forensically significant data we have. Ancient sources record that during the attack, Caesar attempted to defend himself. He grabbed the arm of one of his attackers. He pulled his toga up to cover his face, a gesture the sources describe as an act of dignity, not wanting to be seen dying. Then he moved. He made it to the base of the statue of Pompey, his old enemy, where he collapsed. Forensic behavior analysis tells us something critical here. A man who has sustained a wound to the aorta has, depending on the wound's exact location and size, between 2 and 5 minutes of conscious activity before blood loss reaches a level that causes loss of consciousness. Caesar moved. He spoke. He pulled his toga. He reached Pompey's statue. This timeline is consistent with a single aortic wound, not with multiple simultaneous fatal injuries. If Caesar had sustained several fatal wounds at once, he would not have been capable of any of that. The behavioral evidence confirms the forensic anatomy. 1 wound, 1 fatal wound. Everything else was agonizing but survivable. Which brings us to question 3. Who delivered it? The historical narrative has always centered on Brutus. Shakespeare sealed it. Et tu, Brute, the betrayal, the friend who plunged the final blade. But forensic reconstruction of the attack sequence tells a different story. Ancient accounts place the sequence of attackers in rough order. The first strike, a neck wound, was delivered by a senator named Servilius Casca. His brother struck second. Then the group closed in. Brutus, according to multiple ancient sources, struck toward the thigh or the groin. A wound that was painful and demoralizing, but, by forensic assessment, non-fatal. The chest wound, the second chest wound, the fatal one, is attributed by the most detailed ancient accounts to a senator named Cassius, Gaius Cassius Longinus, the man who organized the conspiracy, the man who recruited Brutus, the man who, according to the forensic reconstruction, delivered the wounds that actually ended Julius Caesar's life. Brutus is the face of the betrayal, because history needed a story about friendship destroyed. But Cassius is the man the forensic evidence points to. The algorithm for who killed Caesar has never changed in 2,000 years of popular history, and modern forensic science just quietly rewrote it. If you're finding this valuable, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it's the only signal that tells the algorithm this channel deserves to exist. And subscribe, because what we do to Caesar's assassination, we're going to do to Cleopatra's death next. The forensic findings on that one are even more disturbing. Think about the reality of what happened in that room. 23 men, blades hidden under their togas. Men Caesar had pardoned after the Civil War. Men he had appointed to positions of power. Men who had eaten at his table. And Caesar, 55 years old, one of the greatest military commanders in human history, a man who had crossed the Rubicon with a single legion against the entire Roman Senate, did not see it coming. Or maybe he did. Suetonius records that Caesar had been warned. A soothsayer told him to beware the Ides of March. His wife Calpurnia begged him not to go that day. She had dreamed of his death. Caesar went anyway, and in those final minutes, moving through the chaos of the Senate chamber, grabbing at arms, pulling his toga over his face, making it to the base of Pompey's statue, the forensic evidence suggests he knew. He knew he was dying. The toga over the face was not random. It was deliberate. It was the act of a man choosing how he would be found. Julius Caesar, with an aortic wound bleeding out internally, with 22 other cuts across his body, in the most humiliating circumstances imaginable, chose the exact image he would leave behind, lying at the foot of Pompey's statue, as if even in death he was making a statement. The 3 questions I asked you at the start. If only one wound was fatal, why did it take 23? Because a group assassination in a confined space is not an execution. It is panic. It is 23 men who had never killed anyone before, striking wildly, cutting each other, producing 23 wounds, 17 of which were meaningless, in a matter of minutes. The killing blow was not the product of precision. It was the product of chaos. Caesar had time to speak and move. What does that tell us? It tells us the aortic wound was not instant. It tells us Caesar had minutes, not seconds, between the fatal strike and his death. And he used those minutes to control the only thing he still could: how he would be remembered. Was it Brutus? No. Forensic reconstruction of the wound sequence, the ancient accounts of attacker positions, and the anatomical evidence of the fatal wound all point to Cassius. Brutus struck, but not fatally. History chose Brutus because the story of betrayed friendship is more powerful than the story of a political operative. The forensic record chose Cassius. Julius Caesar was not brought down by his closest friend. He was brought down by the man who spent months planning his death, and then delivered the one wound in exactly the right place that made everything else irrelevant. 23 blades, one verdict. Now I want to hear yours. Who do you think history has been most wrong about, Brutus or Cassius? Comment below. The discussion on the last video ran for days, and I read every single one. Next, Cleopatra. The official story is a cobra bite. The forensic evidence suggests something far more deliberate and far more political. That one drops soon. Subscribe if you're not already. This is Dead Verdicts, real forensic science, real history, and verdicts that 2,000 years got wrong.